Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wisdom from North, the place where we're diving into the deeper meaning of life and asking the big questions. My name is Jannike, and today I'm here with my friend Karianne Stenshagen, who is a Norwegian astrologer and who is very passionate about feminine astrology. And that's what we're going to speak about today, how to integrate our goddess power, which apparently has been dormant for thousands of years. And we're going to learn even what that means, to integrate the goddess power. So welcome, Karianne. It's nice to have you back.
Thank you, Jannike. It's nice to be back.
Yeah, and I've interviewed you 2 times before. And the first time, I just have to mention to my new subscribers, because the first time I interviewed you was in August 2012. And I had never done an interview before. And that's where my web series started. And you were also just starting out doing astrology. You had a website, and it all kind of started for us at that point.
I was your first interview, wasn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just you saying yes, I was like, I have someone to interview, and I'm gonna put a link to it here. And I didn't have a microphone, and I had a completely different camera, like this amateur camera, but we're still doing this, aren't we?
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And so much has happened since
I know.
since that time.
I know. And now you've launched your website, Feminine Astrology.
Yeah.
And you're doing an online course now in June.
I am.
Yeah. Oh, only in Norwegian at first.
Yeah, first this is the first time I'm having this course. It's like a 7-month online course. And so later my intention is to do it in English as well, but the first time in Norwegian.
Awesome. So tell us about feminine astrology. What is that? Does that mean that there is a masculine astrology and that you're doing feminine astrology, or what does that mean?
Yeah. First of all, I guess like feminine astrology is a term that I have come up with.
Okay.
So I've actually never heard the term feminine astrology before I've named my website. But in astrology, you have 10 planets, which represent different archetypes. And 2 of those 10 are feminine. That's Venus and the moon. And the rest of the 8 are masculine. And between Mars and Jupiter, they discovered that there was a gap, and this was in the 1800s, and that there was supposed to be a planet there, like when you measure how long it should be between each planet. So that's when it started a search for the missing planet. And 1890 something, there was an Italian astronomer who discovered a planet. And he named this planet Ceres after the goddess of agriculture. But later they discovered several small planets in this area between Mars and Jupiter, and they all got named after different goddesses. And that was a way also to balance out, because there were so many masculine planets, so it was like a way to balance them. And when there is a discovery of a planet, it's also often like reflective of an archetype that we are integrating in our consciousness. So this can reflect that, some feminine qualities that were, perhaps dormant, like you say, for a while, is starting to reappear in our consciousness. And now it's like these small planets, we call them asteroids, that you can actually find in your chart, like in your horoscope, to see, which sign they are, and you can interpret, what they mean in your life. So basically, to include these different feminine archetypes of different like feminine roles. Is integrating more of the feminine in astrology. And of course we have Venus and Moon, which is also the feminine.
I find this so interesting because are you saying that we discovered these small asteroids or planets in the 1800s. And then that reflects what we're going through as humanity now, moving into the feminine.
Yeah, and parallel will going, like probably because we're going into the age of Aquarius. And like the teacher of my astrology teacher, he actually claims that the first like matriarchy is like when we worshipped the goddess, and that when there was more like female like women had strong roles in society. He claims that the first matriarchy come from the last age of Aquarius, and that moving into age of Aquarius now we're starting and to open up again, and that this asteroid is sort of like been starting to integrate these goddesses.
Right.
Is like a key to moving into the age of Aquarius.
But let me ask a little bit about when we say the age of Aquarius.
Yeah.
How long does an age last, like an era of Aquarius? Is it like 1,000 years?
It's like 2,000 year and something. I actually can't exactly remember, but it's like, a little more than 2,000 years.
So the last matriarchy was like 24,000 years ago.
Yeah, because that's like a world, like
Wow.
a whole cycle. That's like a whole world.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, and that also, I mean, that probably like that we have had a period now in history with more like patriarchy. And when we moved, the change happened when we moved from the time of Taurus to the age of Taurus to the age of Aries, when it started to be more wars and things like that. And that's
When was that?
like around 2250 before Christ.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, then we came into an era with more wars and etc. And then Jesus' time with the Pisces.
Yeah, and when we start to come into the time of more war, we started to separate it. That we started spirit and matter. So like spirituality was like it was gods up in the sky. So we started to like separate the body and the spirits.
And now we're coming back to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and we accept that spirituality is also integrating into the body. It's not like disappearing up there, but it's actually about coming into the body.
Yeah, right. Being grounded, right?
Yeah.
Instead of being up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So bringing whatever is up there down here.
Right, because we are human beings and we are, have a mission here. I'm thinking as human beings, like that really resonates with me, like integrating the spirituality here as a human being, not to try to, I don't know, be, this angelic person thinking positively all the time, but kind of integrating all these sides, and also the. You were talking about the dark goddesses as well, and I found that very interesting. But we're going to talk about that. But before, I'm so excited about this. Before, I want to speak about Mars and Venus and the Moon, because they were the two only feminine planets at first before we discovered these others. And you say that they represented, the mistress and the mother.
Yeah.
And that's been, the typical stereotypes that...
Exactly.
Yeah. That the woman has only been two things.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is something I also can talk a lot about. But that we just did this meditation together with like the cycle, and that the different stages in a woman's life. And like we've lived in a time, I mean, it's really changing, but that the roles that has been accepted is like the virgin and the mother, and like the dark goddesses. It's like something that has been feared in society. So it's like aspects of the feminine that has been suppressed and feared, and that's when it started to also become distorted, because when things are suppressed, of course, there's created a shadow. So that's why, you know, some of the feminine that has been suppressed, and there's also always like a shadow to it.
So instead of just, you know, having integrated Venus and the moon in a woman, we can now integrate all these other archetypes or goddesses.
It's like, for instance, we have Pallas Athena, which we talked about, and she's the woman that's, you know, she is having a career. She's, you know, it's like for a long time, women has had the role only of taking care of others. But now it's like allowed to be independent. We can have a life on our own.
Self-realized?
Yeah, self-realized, and that's very much Pallas Athena. But her wound is that she's too masculine.
Her wound?
Her wound.
Okay.
Like, for instance, like the feminists, they were really like, you know, like Pallas Athena archetypes, you know, woman needs to be independent. And then we forget that we also need the nurturing part. So she was, you know, and there's, to all these goddesses, there are different mythology. And the mythology related to Pallas Athena was that she was becoming one of the men, but she had to sacrifice her femininity. So she never got married, she never had a lover, but she was respected among men because she was, you know, becoming one of the men, and she went to the more masculine place in herself. And that also reflect like a woman in the business world. Like, for her to be respected, it's easy to go to the more masculine.
Yes, and that's so relevant in the Scandinavian countries, where I think that has happened a lot.
Yeah.
That we feel we have to look like men, be like men, in order to take place and stand in our power and all that. And then we realize that, what about the feminine side of us?
Yeah. And then it's sort of, what we compromise is then also our relationship. Because if we live too much in Pallas Athena, it's also hard to attract a man. Because then if we're too masculine, so it's like when you start to get to know the different goddesses, you can sort of dance like, okay, now I'm in Pallas Athena, it's okay to be a little masculine. And then, you know, if I'm going on a date, maybe I need to go to Aphrodite.
Right.
And
I like
I
that.
need to, you know, change. So what I see that I do in my life is that I start to play with these different goddesses. And it's like, even during one day, it's like, you know, now I need a little Aphrodite, or I need a little, you know, so it's like during a day I play with these different roles.
So tell us about Aphrodite. She's the goddess of love and romance, or?
Yeah, she's the goddess of love and passion. And there's also an asteroid that's actually called Aphrodite. So Venus and Aphrodite, they are also the same. Like Venus is the Roman name and Aphrodite is the Greek name, but they're actually a separate goddess called Aphrodite. But she's like the goddess of love and passion. And
but they're different planets.
Yeah, or mini planets or asteroids. Yeah. Yeah. So she loves to be in the moment. She loves to be passionate. You know, she's perhaps like artistic. And her wound is, of course, that she is the mistress.
Oh. Okay. Yeah. So you don't want to always go into that.
It's like if you are only having Aphrodite, you could perhaps attract unavailable men, because you are maybe afraid to commit, because you maybe think that is boring.
She likes freedom.
She likes freedom. And then if she integrates a little bit of Juno, which is more like the committed relationship, that could help her to find like a balance between Juno and Aphrodite.
Right. So Juno, is that the mother type?
No, Juno is it's marriage.
Marriage, family. No.
Not family, but the committed, you know, the one that is, which Aphrodite can sort of be a flirt, and Juno is more like a committed partnership.
Oh, okay. So tell us more about Juno.
Yeah, so she is a goddess of marriage, and she is also the queen. So she was married in the mythology. She was married to Jupiter, and Jupiter was the king of the sky, and Juno was the queen. And they were supposed to have a honeymoon that lasted 300 years, and then Jupiter started to have affairs. And Juno, she was, furious at these women that Jupiter had affairs with and the children. And so she became like a victim of a man, because she expected that the marriage would fulfill a lot of her needs. And then she married Jupiter, and first they were very happy, but then he started to have affairs. And she also felt very humiliated. And that's also like an archetype that lives in our psyche. Like, women that are married, they experience, jealousy, and that maybe that their men have affairs. So they also then need to learn to not give away all their power to the man, and also, learn that, because, sometimes women can be too identified with being the wife, which men often is more identified with their career. Like sometimes women are more identified with, being the wife.
So the wound of Juno, is that then victim?
Yeah,
Victimhood?
and rage and humiliation.
Oh.
So it's like some of the goddesses are, we call the virgin goddesses. So they sort of avoided being in a relationship with men, so they didn't become victimized. And we have some more like relationship-oriented goddesses, which in different ways became victimized by men. And interestingly, Aphrodite is like a little in between. So she's like, she's independent, but she's also in relationship. So she's the only one that sort of balances that.
Oh, okay. So what about Ceres?
Ceres is the mother. The mother goddess.
So because there were 5 asteroids that were found, or 4?
It's actually between 16 and 17,000.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay.
But
but the main ones that you are talking about.
The first one that was discovered was Ceres.
Okay.
And when they discovered Ceres, they thought that this was the missing planet.
Oh.
And some people think that, or some astronomers think that there could perhaps have been one planet between Mars and Jupiter that was originally was one planet, and that this was, it was exploded to and destroyed to all these different fragments, and that reflects what has happened to the feminine.
Oh, that's...
Yeah.
Wow.
And that Ceres was part of that original planet.
Oh, okay. So what about these more dark goddesses, like Persephone, and Medusa? Medusa with the hair?
Yeah.
And Lilith?
Lilith.
What about them? I mean, I look at them as pretty dark, especially Medusa. But then again, we are human beings who have light and darkness in us, and it's duality, and it's about integrating and accepting everything within ourselves. So can you talk about a little bit about how and why we should integrate Persephone? Persephone,
yes. So
for example.
So first of all, before I answer specific about Persephone, I can tell you a little bit about the dark goddesses, because they reflect the dark phase of the moon.
Oh.
So the moon starts, a whole cycle. It starts with the new moon, and then the moon builds, and it's a full moon, and then the moon decreases. And before there's a new moon, there is a period that we call the dark moon. And when we did that meditation, so like let's say that the new moon is when there's new life. That's like when we're born, and the full moon is like the mother phase. That's when we are the most productive in our life. And then the moon start to decrease, it starts to become smaller, and that's when we start to age. And the dark moon phase was, originally the dark goddesses they were guiding people when people were old and when people were dying. They guided, so people went to the dark goddesses when they were old and dying, and they prepared them for dying and also for reincarnation, being born again. Because when in societies that was more worship the moon, they believed in reincarnation. And because the moon is cyclic, so it's like it is born and it's death and it's reborn, and that's what happens in nature.
It kind of mirrors the reincarnation.
Yes,
the moon, the
yeah,
cycle.
exactly. Yeah. So the moon is like mirrors the cycle of death and rebirth, which is also happening in nature. And then when we started to worship the sun instead of the moon, like in history,
which is masculine.
Which is masculine. Okay. We stopped also believing in reincarnation. So the dark goddesses started to be feared, and because people started to become afraid of death. So the productivity phase, like the full moon phase, is like, like holding on to life. So they didn't accept maybe the life force is starting to decrease. Maybe it's natural to live a little bit more slow. Because if you don't believe in reincarnation, you only have one life. Of course, you have to get the most out of it every second. So it's like
and death is a failure in a way.
Yeah, and a huge fear.
Yeah.
So they started to fear the dark goddesses and this phase of the moon, and also parallel that when we separated the body and the spirit, so like woman and also sexuality was seen as like a temptation for men, something that took them away from their spirituality. So it was like certain aspects of the feminine that was feared. And that's also like a lot is reflective in our society, that we accept like the new moon and the full moon stage and like the production stage in our life. It's like you can see it in the agriculture, in business life, that we're all the time, being on, and instead of actually that life and females, we are life is cyclic. So it's we need to, it's like be productive, and then we need to rest, and then we are productive, and then we need to rest. And the same is nature, the same is stock market, like business. So that's can be like and
I think that's a challenge in our society.
Yeah, huge challenge.
And in ourselves, and to accept with ourselves that now I have to rest. I can't produce all the time, because I can just find in myself that I feel so good when I'm producing, when I'm making things or being creative. And when I'm not feeling that creative, it's kind of like I didn't get to do something today. And especially in Norway, to be of use, that you should be useful. You have to do something useful all the time to feel value.
Yeah, because I feel it's so easy to feel guilty if you're not productive all the time. It's like,
And that's not in alignment with nature. That's what you're saying.
And for us women, like the menstrual cycle is like a way for us to really live in tune with the cycle. So it's like before our period, that's like when the moons start to decrease, and it's natural for us to start to move a little bit more, live a little bit more silent. And the menstruation phase is like really the black moon phase. So it's natural to actually go more inward, to be more quiet, like your intuition is really heightened. Instead of like when they advertise for this, what do you call when you have your period, you use, what do you call it in English?
Tampons.
Yeah,
and
tampon.
Stuff like
it's
that.
like the advertisements say, you know, you can do whatever you want and when you
Yeah.
have your period, but actually it's for our body, it's natural to pace down.
Interesting.
And after the period again, that's more like the new moon phase. So it's like you go out of that more meditation state and your new energy, and you're starting to become more productive again.
But we definitely feel that as women, that there's so many things going on when we have our period with the skin and emotions and everything. It's just not right. Things are challenging, and it can be good to step back a little bit and relax.
Yeah.
So let's go back to Persephone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was a huge...
Yeah, because I found that so interesting that you're saying that it has to do with separation, the painful separation to your mother. And I think that's something we all can relate to, that's really hard to separate from our mother, because that bond is so strong, and why should we separate? And maybe she can be our best friend, but that's not always good.
So Persephone is the daughter archetype, and she's also the queen of the underworld. Yeah, so Ceres was the mother of Persephone, and Persephone was abducted to the underworld of Pluto, and she was taken to be Pluto's bride in the underworld. And this is like a separation from the mother. And the underworld can reflect the
dog.
That's
fine.
Yeah. So the underworld can reflect the unconscious. So Persephone can be like, in one way, this loyal daughter, and other world is this separation from the mother and also get to know the underworld. And so that can be like a split in us. You know, in one way we want to be the loyal daughter to our mothers, and in other way we actually need to separate from our mothers in order to fully have our own lives. So Persephone is about that painful journey to be your own person, and it is going through the dark, that separation, and it is really, really painful.
Yes, it can feel dark,
Yeah.
you know, you just want to be there for your mother, be a good daughter, but then you have to set up boundaries.
Yeah.
And that can feel harsh in a way.
And it's
I
also
feel like.
going out of that loyalty in a way to your mother. Of course, you're always your mother's daughter, but there is like some loyalty that needs to be broken in order for you to individuate and fully become your own person. Like I found, because when I have worked with this different archetypes myself, what I discovered with Persephone was that she's a lot about emotional honesty. And especially sometimes when you grow up, you, like if you are, I call it like a Persephone archetype. If you carry a lot of that archetype, maybe you grow up in a family and things that has not been talked about, it can be something that happened to earlier generations, or it can be something in the family that's not talked about. Persephone is sort of really absorbing the shadow of the family. So she can like live in two worlds. In one way, she's like the, sweet, innocent. And in other ways, she lives in a completely different world, that she's feeling all these feelings or memories that are not talked about. So to really reclaim Persephone is to really start to own and really take that serious. That needs to have a voice, that which has been hidden.
Right. So a little bit about Medusa as well, because to me she's a bit frightening.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why and how can we integrate her, and what is she symbolizing?
Like in mythology, of course, she was known to have
The hair with the
of snakes,
Yeah.
and her when she looked at a man, they were turned into stone. And Pallas Athena is carrying Medusa in her chest.
Oh.
And Pallas Athena was known for only having a father. She was born out of the head of Jupiter, and she claimed that she didn't have a mother. So Medusa is more like is related to the feminine part of Pallas Athena that has been suppressed, because one time she was supposed to have been a really beautiful woman, and also related to like snake wisdom, and also related to our period, and also like rejuvenation and healing. And because then she started to become feared because of the different reason I talked about with the dark goddess. And of course when there is fear, there also something is suppressed, and the shadow become this monster. So in my course, one module will be about Medusa and reclaiming what Medusa once was, which is a huge part about the healing that Pallas Athena archetype, related to healing the Pallas Athena archetype and reclaiming the feminine.
Okay, reclaiming the feminine.
Yeah.
That's her main thing
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about now in the end about your process, because you, you were very interested in this and had also wounds related to the feminine, and you started to delve into this, and it really showed up in your life.
It's because I've done astrology for a long time, and I could never have had foreseen that I was going to start to do these feminine archetypes in depth like I've started to do. But I was going to have a lecture at a conference, and I chose to talk about this asteroid and feminine archetypes. And when I started to study this material, what happened was that 14 days in a row they appeared in my dream. So it was almost like a download.
Wow.
Like it was a huge opening, and I discovered that I opened up to a door, and it was so much that wanted to be lived and expressed. And I have, started to have a really love affair with these different goddesses. So I can see when I really start to study one of the goddesses in depth, they start to appear in my life.
Wow. Do you have any examples on how
Yeah,
they show
it's
up?
like when I started to open up to Pallas Athena, I started this course about learning how to build an online business, because I studied marketing a long time ago, and then I went into the more spiritual world. But suddenly, like my inner businesswoman, she was...
she reappeared.
Yeah, she reappeared. And now I've taken these several courses about, how to build your email list, how to build your online business. And parallel with that, it's Pallas Athena that I'm integrating.
Right.
And it's like, when I opened up to Juno, I attracted this course that was called Calling in the One, how to attract your partner. And that led to attracting my soul partner. Yeah, so I have many examples how...
Catherine Woodward Thomas that I've interviewed as well. Yeah. Wonderful. So you said to me just before this interview that you had looked at my horoscope.
I did, yes.
Can you say a few words about that? What did you find?
Yeah, I for example, I saw that you had Vesta. That's the keeper of the flame. That's the spiritual focus. That she was actually together with your Venus. So they were very closely together.
What does that mean?
So for instance, it can mean that your partner, that you need to have to go a spiritual path together with your partner.
my partner?
Yeah.
My future partner?
Yes.
Okay. But
That
it's not here yet.
Yeah, but that you need to have you know,
I need to have a spiritual partner.
yeah, or that you have a spiritual focus is part of your relationship together. That you have a spiritual path together.
You saw that in the horoscope?
Yeah.
Well, that resonates.
Yeah, and it can also show that you have a memory about being like one of those Vesta virgins.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Karianne.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jannike.
I love listening to this and I'm learning so much. We're going to do another interview in Norwegian as well. So good luck with your online course and with your wonderful work.
Thank you so much. Good luck with your work, and thank you for being your guest again.
Thank you. And thank you so much for watching, guys. And remember to subscribe to my channel if you haven't before. Much light from Oslo. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.